All right, I am here with Ed Cyzewski, who is the author of Reconnect: Spiritual Restoration from Digital Distraction. He's also the author of Flee, Be Silent, Pray. I love that book, and so many other books. And his writing has appeared in Christianity Today and Leadership Journal. So he writes at edcyzewski.com. Ed, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I've been following you for like many, many years. Actually, I should look into my emails that I never delete and find out when was the very first time that I've connected or found you and what you do. But I love reading the email that you send out, and you're a very thoughtful writer. And I guess maybe one of the things that I really love is that you're into and you understand and you help people understand contemplative prayers. So that's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's
So,
been a big part of my healing process. So, yeah,
yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you do right now.
sure. Right now, I renovate a house. But I am a freelance writer, editor, and author. And so those are kind of the three different hats that I wear throughout any given week.
Yeah,
So I have my own books I work on. I have books that I edit for people, usually development editing. So it's like taking like the structure of the book and really helping them rework it, usually
right.
nonfiction. And then just like if someone needs a website, website writing content for a website, I do that too. So I kind
Nice.
of all kinds of different things come in to do, and I just try to keep up with it all.
Yeah. And you try to keep up with your kids as well, right?
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely a part-time job, the writing, because I'm with the kids a lot too. They're
Yeah, for
not quite
sure.
all into school yet, so.
Right. Well, so what we're talking about is getting past and getting through some difficult times. And I know you've had some difficult times in your life and things that have started you on paths that you didn't anticipate and that you didn't necessarily want even. So, first of
Hmm.
all, tell me a little bit about some of that event or those things that you've come through, and then let's talk about how that's played out in your life.
Yeah, I don't usually write about this part of my life just because I feel like it's one of those things where like it's like wounds that you don't want to like reopen through
Mm-hmm.
writing.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem talking about it, but I came from parents who divorced,
Yeah.
and it was it was tumultuous. It was very disruptive. I spent a lot of time in courtrooms.
Uh,
Spent a lot of times in psychologist offices growing up until I was 16.
mm,
Um, there was a lot of turmoil and a lot of different legal battles, over custody between my parents. And honestly, I feel like my perspective has changed a bit even over time, just as I've grown up and maybe learned more or just kind of gotten different perspectives on it.
yeah.
But a big part of my life has been, the managing that conflict and figuring out like what does having my own home now, like what does a peaceful home look like? What does it look
Right.
like for us to work through conflict together and have that conflict not be the end of the world? Just because
Right.
I didn't really see that modeled as a
Mm,
kid. I saw a lot of other coping strategies that were a lot more destructive or just not helpful.
right.
And so, that conflict has been a big part of my history. And as I've turned to prayer, that's helped me deal with the pain and the conflict and just process things. And that's, when you go through something big like that, you can't run from that pain.
Yeah.
And that's been the hardest thing is that you have, like, it's going to come out. It's so you either
One
like,
way or the other.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you got to set the terms or those terms are going to be set for you.
Oh,
And that's been a big part of my journey.
yeah. So I love that. And because of that, you developed some anxiety issues and things
Yeah,
like that. So how did the conflict in that past? And, everyone, I always say there's no trauma Olympics.
right.
So what was traumatic for you might not be traumatic for me, but I had my own trauma. Pretty much
Yeah,
nobody escapes childhood without some sort of trauma. But how
yeah.
did that conflict, there's a lot of conflict there. How did that shape who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that, that perfectionism, that, desire to be accepted.
Mm,
Um, the word, like when I go to like therapy, like, and I think that we need to talk about like going to therapy
yeah,
because then other people won't like have a stigma about it.
right,
I've had no problem admitting that I go to therapy and my therapist and I talk a lot about control,
right,
right? Like that's
yeah,
like when you are part of something, a situation in your childhood that feels completely out of control, that becomes something that you really want later in life.
yeah.
And you know, there are situations where you are out of control, and I have developed little mantras that kind of help me deal with situations in life. And so one of my mantras is, I'm not in control, but I'm safe.
Ooh, that's good. I like that.
And that kind of helps me process my anxiety in the moment when I feel like, with the COVID-19, I'm not in control, but I'm safe. I'm in
Right.
my home. I can wear a mask. I can wash my hands. I can wear gloves. I can
Mm,
social distance. Like there are things I can do to be safe, but I can't control a virus at the same time.
right.
And so, learning strategies to face, um, my mindset. And let's be really honest here. Like I know a lot of people who are medicating themselves in
Oh
ways
yeah.
that are private. They're on
Right.
sleeping pills, they're
Mm-hmm.
doing recreational drugs, like they're managing their pain. And I don't want to like cast judgment on people, maybe like for what they do for recreation, but I do want to ask, like, are you facing the pain? Are you dealing with it? And are you finding a way to um, to deal with it?
Mm,
And my psychologist says, like, you've got to like go to your coping mechanism, you know, get get out of the moment of the pain,
right.
and then you can process it, and then you can think about it.
Right.
Um, and that's been like a big part of my journey, is to figure out, you know, in the past it used to just be, I don't feel safe, I'm gonna run away.
Right.
I'm gonna, and so learning to not run away has been the hardest thing. And that's in everything. That's my marriage and my work, like everything.
Right.
It
Because
all filters down.
you're gonna have conflict no matter what. I mean, that's what the the world
Yeah.
is all about. It's really interesting you say that mantra because I just created this a little sticky that says, "This is my mantra. I have more to learn here. I
Mm,
have more to learn here." And so even though if I'm not in a great place, I'm like, okay, I have more to learn here. What is that? Let me explore. So that's kind of my mantra. But I'll tell you what I've done also is turn to my phone and turn to
uh-huh.
binge watching Netflix, like Saturday Night Live on Netflix.
Oh
Not
man.
Netflix, on YouTube,
Yeah. Yeah.
like film after film after film,
Right.
and
Right.
I got to a point where I'm like, this is not healthy. I This is not a great way to deal with the things that are going on in the world. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I can relate. I mean, I had, a book release a couple days ago, and I usually don't have any social media on my phone.
Hmm.
And I put Instagram back on my phone just so that I could like run ads, and I could
Right.
like I can see messages. I usually try to run everything off of my computer,
Hmm.
but there's certain things you can't do on your computer with Instagram. But right when I got Instagram back on my phone, that's when all the George Floyd protests started happening.
Ah, right.
And so you're exposed to these traumatizing, upsetting images.
Hmm.
And I had to delete Instagram right away,
Yeah.
because that was kind of a coping thing, where it's like, let me just look at pictures of people who are happy or doing interesting things or whatever.
Right.
So I completely relate to that. I mean, that's just, we all have our way. I mean, Seth Haynes talks about like our sobriety, inner sobriety, that
Hmm.
we all have our way to kind of scratch that itch.
Right. Wow. So what are some other ways, like failed strategies? Because I'm sure you've tried
Right.
lots of different things, and to get to this, what are some ways you've experimented with?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have our kind of like our go-to things. I mean, like for me, it's like disengaging, sloth. Like those become like
Mm,
the go-to strategies of like, I'm gonna, just check out and go on Twitter for a little bit.
Yeah.
which never is a little bit.
Right.
And it never really helps, it usually makes things worse. So that's a failed strategy. It's like, I'm tired, I'm going to just go do some social media like that.
Right.
That's not a good, and it took me like years to figure that out. Like that's why I wrote Reconnect, was because I saw how dramatically I failed.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is kind of related to that. It's that like guilt and shame doesn't help either.
Yeah.
That like when you get stuck in a negative cycle, guilt and shame just doesn't help. And
Mm.
I like that I have more to learn here, because it's like, okay, that didn't work. What can I try again?
Right.
And it's funny. The guy who developed all the habit formation psychology, BJ Fogg, he like trained all the Silicon Valley engineers for like how to make their apps addicting.
Oh my goodness.
So it's like
Wow.
his Fogg behavior method. You can look it up online. He has it online. He's got videos and everything. But the crazy thing about it is that you can like use his same habit method to kind of reverse engineer your life to like make healthy habits too.
Wow. Okay,
And
tell us about that. What
yeah,
tell,
so what he talks about is that so your a habit is a motivation, an ability, and a prompt.
mm-hmm. Okay.
So you're motivated for something, you have the ability to do it, it's easy, and then you have a prompt to do it.
Prompted to do it. Okay.
Yeah. So he said a lot of times what people do, and this is a big thing for Christians, okay? It's a lot of times people make that into an acronym where it's like MAP, where it's like you try to attack your motivation first, and then you try to like address your ability to do it, and then like your last resort is your prompt. He said
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do is flip it around
Ah,
and approach it more like an experiment. That like I have more to learn here, right? So it's like,
right.
okay, how I tried to not use my phone yesterday didn't work out. I'm going to like hold back on judgment and think of a new prompt today to use my phone less. I'm going to take,
Ah.
and I'm going to make it harder to use my phone. I'm going to attach my ability. And then
Mm-hmm.
the motivation is like last. And so he kind of like makes like a chart about it. Like if your motivation's really high, then all that other stuff doesn't matter as much.
Right.
But if your motivation's kind of low, maybe because you're feeling sad or depressed, like you're motivated to get on that phone and disconnect from things. And so then you address your prompt and your ability.
Right.
So you keep your phone further away from yourself. So like when I sleep, my phone is not within arm's reach.
Right.
I, for ability, like I use the downtime setting on my iPhone where, at 9 or 9:30, I get a little thing that says like you're at your limit for today. Like it has a little, you know,
Ah, right.
you know.
Yeah.
So there's like the prompt and the ability there, and so to like remove judgment and to be more experimental and to be more curious. I think that a
Mm.
lot of times we get into these like life and death struggles because honestly, like we're coping with life and death issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are serious things and they lead to unhealthy habits and behaviors. But
Right.
if we can have a more experimental, let's try this out, let's see what works, what helps me, and it'll evolve over time. Like I've been interviewing people about how they set boundaries around their social media use. I've already had someone who I interviewed last week like text me this morning saying like, I made a big change. Like I'm actually using it differently this week. Can we like add that to the like experiment,
Awesome.
change, and like try different
Right.
things.
Oh, I love that. I love the fact of being curious and, experimenting because with that comes a little bit of self-compassion. Like,
Right.
man, I fail. It's kind of like that diet that everybody does. You do the diet and you fail and you just, eat more or
Right.
something.
Right.
Just be curious about it. Be curious about what worked, what didn't work, why didn't it work, and maybe, okay, what could I work what could I do try this week now for that?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I I,
Absolutely.
I like that.
And that's
Um,
like, oh, sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like everything that I've read about habit formation, I've read a lot of different books about this. You know, it's all about starting small. It's all
Mm,
about like, like BJ
mm-hmm.
Fogg's book is called Tiny Habits.
Uh,
So start small, and give yourself those little victories. And like, and that's like when I started running regularly, and a couple of years ago, what happened was I went to Austin with my wife for a research trip at University of Austin, and I was
mm-hmm.
walking around this big park, and everyone's like running, and it was just like that looks like it's just this like really motivating, like inspiring, like man, everyone runs. So when we came home, I bought some new running shoes and
Uh-huh.
I put them out in the morning with all my clothes, and it was
Right.
right there for me to see. So I had a good prompt. And what I did was I thought, I want to stick with this for a long time. So I'm going to just like run until I can't, and then I'm going to walk. And I walked a lot. Like I like, like it was like the first month I did a lot more walking than I did running. But,
Hmm.
I eventually, after like 3 months, I got the strength to like run a whole time
Right.
without any walking. And, I think that's kind of how we have to look at creating these healthy habits for ourselves when,
Right.
I had all these unhealthy habits. And then when I was motivated to make a change, I had to just say like, let's just figure out what would work for me, for
Yeah.
Ed. And
Right.
for me, it was like a lot of walking.
But you gave yourself the grace, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not the greatest runner. I've not run a
Right.
whole mile, but
Yeah.
you gave yourself kind of an out that, okay, you're still keeping on going. You're just walking.
Right.
And I love that because it's like, it's not a all or nothing. It's like,
Yes.
okay, what can I do? What am I able to do? And then do a little bit more each day.
Yes. Yes.
So fabulous. I one of the things and you mentioned this is one of the things I know is that when we get into tough situations or when we get stressed out, we kind of close everything off and we are in our own little bubble, and we try not to, we actually are not like aware of even how we are feeling ourselves. Like we try to even
Right.
ignore what our own feelings are. And so getting those out in the open by writing or journaling or doing your mantra, getting that out so you recognize what you're feeling, then you
Yes.
can deal with it, right? Then you can say, okay, am I developing some habits that are not helping me? And
Right.
then what am I doing about that? What can I do about that? So I like that because you have to recognize first what you're doing, then you can start that experimentation. You can start that curiosity and figure out what you're doing.
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
so for my phone, for me, like that is, my phone has been in the past one of my like go to, like just go lay in bed and just scroll or watch YouTube
Yep.
videos or something. And
Yep.
so after reading your book, I'm like, oh, wow, okay. There's lots of things I can do. And I actually started doing them, which is pretty cool, like making my phone turn gray at the end of
Yes.
the day.
Yep.
That is so boring. Like,
Yep.
ugh.
Yeah.
Which is
Right.
good for me.
Yep. Yep.
um, and things like that. So um, there are lots of other things, but one of the fascinating, and this just goes to how much we are almost controlled, or other people try to control us. One of the
Yeah.
things you mentioned was they tried how many different colors of blue on Facebook before they figured out the one that you click the most on, right? Am
It's
I
like
getting that right?
it's like 40 some different colors. Yeah.
40 some different colors. They
Yep.
did experiments to figure out which one you were going to click on the most.
Yep.
And they used that blue. I mean, that blows my mind to the depths to what they will do to make
Right.
sure we are continuing to be addicted to that.
And the little red notification bubbles too. They experimented with that, and it was, they tried different colors, and it was like, if it was like green or, yellow, it wouldn't get the same amount of clicks as if it was a little red bubble. And
Mm-hmm.
and I was even talking to another author, Sean Smucker, about Voxer, which is like a
Uh-huh.
messaging
Yeah,
app.
I use Voxer.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and there's like sometimes like a little the notification bubble will appear, and he was saying it drives him crazy because he can't figure out how to get rid of it.
Right.
And and it's that like like I just want to like I want to make it go away. Like there is a psychology to how it's designed.
Yeah. I've had to turn off notifications on my computer. It shows up on the little
Yep.
bottom, and on
Yep.
my phone as well. So like there are apps that I don't even like allow notifications, only if I choose to go into that app, because
Right.
that same, like, their notifications all along time. What is that one? What is that one? What is that one?
Right.
And
Prompt. It's a prompt.
it is a prompt. I guess that is a prompt.
Right.
That is a prompt. Wow. So prompt, and then what was that?
Ability.
Ability. So the
Yep.
ability would be, give me some examples of that?
I mean, you know, uh, the ability is just that the smartphones and the apps are just so easy to use. They're so intuitive.
Mm,
It's that, you don't have to like figure out how do you use this thing.
right.
I mean, it's like my kids are, using tablets and things in a very limited way, but like, my 5-year-old now is like, when I play like a hockey video for him, we watch some videos on YouTube, hockey videos, and like he knows how to do it. Like he can figure it out, no problem.
Right.
So the ability is like that even a kid can do it.
Mm-hmm. So you've got to take that away or reduce that or increase the complexity of doing it so that it's harder for you to even do that. Let me
Right.
ask you this. So there are
Yeah.
some days I have had stress, complete stress. There are some days when like my brain capacity, like I'm done. I'm at the end of my brain capacity. Are
Yeah.
there good ways to like just de-stress that you know of that just will get you out of that, like when I would normally turn to YouTube and just binge watch, what could I do instead?
I mean, there are like the stereotypical things, but like honestly, like get outside
Ah,
and, look
right.
at it. Like, I mean, like, so they've done studies where even like prison inmates in solitary confinement who sit in a room with like a video of nature, like trees and stuff, their stress and anxiety went way down just by
Wow.
looking at a video of trees.
Mm,
So it's like you can go outside, like,
right.
so for me, like gardening has been really good.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, creative stuff's been good. Like I'm trying to learn how to do pastels. So actually, my YouTube watching has increased because I'm watching like YouTube tutorials.
Uh-huh.
But I wouldn't say that's de-stressing yet because I'm still kind of like, oh, this sucks,
You're in the learning
So
stage, right?
yeah. But I mean, for me, like getting outside is so important. And,
Yeah.
um, now that it's gardening season, that's been really great. I mean, I think that, you know, these things like, I mean, like, watching a video, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I think that it's, yeah, like the studies they've done of social media is that it has like a 30-minute limit
Mm-hmm.
where you get benefits from the connections on social media if you limit it to within about 30 minutes a day.
Right.
So you can
Nice.
make like meaningful one-on-one connections. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't even like when I talk in the book about Reconnect, talk about, prioritize silence, protect your time,
Mm.
and, or I mean, I'm sorry, you know, restore yourself with silence, uh, guard your attention and your time, and then, prioritize one-on-one connections, relationships.
Yeah. Oh,
And so like use social media to make those personal connections.
those
That's
connections.
great.
Yeah.
But the problem is more of like when you're like screaming into the void of
Mm.
social media, and like it's
Mm-hmm.
like no one notices, no one replies.
Right.
Or when you get engaged in a conversation and it kind of it's like people can't see you, they can't empathize with you in the same way, and so it's like when you really feel like you need that connection and you're getting like the social media version of connection.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
so
Not a
think
real
about,
connection.
yeah, so think about meaningful ways to use it, like use YouTube to learn something new.
Right.
I'm renovating a house. Like right now, I'm redoing my office upstairs, and I'm watching a lot of YouTube about spackling and drywall and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
um, use those things for like really healthy, beneficial things, but yeah, with limits, and prioritize the things that will really restore you, whether that's laying down or taking a walk or gardening or just looking at a tree.
Yeah, I can imagine that like here in Phoenix, like when it gets 110, going
Okay,
outside is not necessarily pleasant, but I can sit here and look out the window and it's like, oh, I see the mountain and the trees and
right.
that could be. And then I don't know why this surprises me. One-on-one, connection. That should not surprise me one single bit.
Mm,
Definitely. And you can call a friend, call
yeah,
somebody, call your, relatives. And um,
yeah,
Jordan Harbinger has this free course that's on connections, on creating connections and like reviving your old connections. Like even just that,
yeah.
messaging somebody and say, hey, how's it going? I'd love to chat. even if you haven't talked to them in a while, can be, we shouldn't forget that one-on-one connection,
Right.
because when you do that, when you connect with people, you are building that strength. You're building that compassionate um, tribe around you, right? Whenever you're
Right.
connecting, as long as it's not like a bad connection, you are enhancing your social ability, and you're enhancing yourself, because then you have other people to share your joys, to share your highs and lows, that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
Love that.
I mean, like just one example of this would be like, I'm in some different like Facebook groups with writers.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, I would, you know, post something in the group and I would want people to engage it, right? I wanted people to
Right.
like, think that I'm interesting or that what I'm doing is worthwhile. And it
Yeah.
just like people wouldn't reply to it in the way that
Mm-hmm.
I had hoped. Like maybe a couple people would acknowledge it, but I'd see how other people were getting interactions and I would feel bad.
Right.
And I like texted a friend, and like that's like one of those conversations where like I remember that text exchange we had, after that experience. And it was like, oh, like that one-on-one connection was so meaningful, and it's something I return to all the time.
Yeah.
It's the wisdom he gave me personally. And so I just think about like what I was looking for in that moment of, putting something out there on Facebook where, I mean, even if you're in a group, you're kind of still shouting into the void. Like you just don't know if people are going to notice you or whatever.
Yeah.
And who knows why people didn't interact with me on that particular moment. But, you know, that I think highlights the challenge. And,
Yeah.
this is a friend who I've, maintained that friendship through social media. So social media isn't necessarily wrong, but
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
it's designed to hook us. It's designed to manipulate us. And so we have to be really vigilant about how it exploits the good things, the things we desire for connection, the things that we desire for healing,
Mm-hmm.
and to use it with a lot of intention, a lot of even just planning.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love this. Just one last question. Are there still ways that you need to intentionally develop resilience each day? I know that you do lots
Yeah,
of different, you've experimented. Thank you for giving us the shortcut. What
yeah,
else are you
yeah.
doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. My wife will say to me, like, "Don't you like need to go for a run? Like, wouldn't that be good for you?" She's not looking at my gut. I mean, she could, but
Right.
she's she's looking at my mental health, and
Right.
so yeah, getting out for walks, getting out for running,
Right. There
yeah,
we
and
go.
like yeah, like that mindfulness. I mean, I always have my journal within arm's reach of me,
Mm,
as much as I can,
hmm.
without being obnoxious about it. But
Right.
like
Well,
always
one of the
carrying.
you
But
mentioned, like, what did you mention? Sitting with silence. Is that what
yeah,
one of the things? Sitting with silence. So
yeah, yeah.
how long, or how do
Right.
we do that?
I mean, so I have kids, so they determine how
Oh
long
yeah.
sometimes. Um, yeah. So what's generally recommended, I mean, so I say to people like start with whatever you can manage. Like I
Mm,
started with 5 minutes, which felt like an eternity.
mm,
Um, what I do now is I try to do either like I try to journal first, where I'm just reflecting on the past day or past 24 hours. It's really helpful to do silence, I think, either first thing in the morning before the day gets going, or to do it in the afternoon as like a break. I feel like those are kind of
right.
like the either like the low energy of the afternoon or like the morning before your brain gets going.
Hmm.
That's I mean, and that's like you just learn from monks, right? Like that's how the monks do it. So
Yeah.
it's like they've had centuries to like work on this. So we should look to them and like
Yeah, they
learn
got some
it.
sort of wisdom with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and nuns, I should say too, monks and nuns. Um, but so if I wake up, I try to make space for silence, and in a perfect world, it would be like 20 to 30 minutes every day, and it fluctuates very
Hmm.
wildly depending on how things are going.
Wow.
I'll either try to journal or I have a prayer book with just some prayers. It's the Divine Hours. It's edited by Phyllis Tickle.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I use but I use something to kind of like clear my brain out first a little bit. Because I
Yeah.
think that if you try to jump into silence, then it becomes a little overwhelming. So you need either some kind of like prayers, or like there's Tizay chants. There's a Spotify playlist of Tizay chants you can find.
Tizay. Huh, I haven't heard that.
Tizay. Yeah, and it's all, I mean, a lot of it's in Latin, but they also have stuff in English. And it's
Huh.
just really simple, repetitive chants. And it just helps your brain. It gives you, the way that some people describe it is it gives your brain something to chew on. It kind of
Ah,
keeps it busy
right.
and gets you out of some of those thought patterns and cycles that might be really, hard to get out of.
Yeah.
And when I do silence, I try to do centering prayer where I'm present from God. I'm aware. The word for contemplative prayer is intention. That like my intention is to be just present for God and
Yeah.
silent. And again, like if a thought comes, I give my brain something to do with a prayer word. So that's like beloved, just to remember that I'm God's beloved.
Mm,
And you just use that word to like return. They say, gently return to the sacred word. Just keep going back to it.
I like
And
that.
when I started out, I'm just like beloved, 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 because the thoughts keep coming. But like running, like you develop a capacity for it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But don't. I think that a lot of times we set ourselves up for failure by like, I'm going to do 20 or 30 minutes of silence, and we don't do
Right.
any kind of preparation for it. We don't build up to it. We don't
Right.
we don't face what's on our minds, what's in our brains. And let's be honest, like Richard Rohr talks a lot about like, we just have a lot of junk in our brains that needs to come
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yeah.
And that's not a so like if you're praying, you know, expect that. If
Right.
you're in silence, expect that. Like
Right.
you have pain that's going to come out,
Yeah.
and it's disturbing and it's not comfortable, but like it will get better if you deal with it. And
Yeah.
and if you can be present for God, like you will find healing. And I don't pray like as like therapy, but it is therapeutic though
Right.
at the same time.
Well, when you're calming your mind, it automatically there's a physical response of calming
Right.
and healing. It actually helps you. So that's really
Yes.
great. That's amazing stuff, Ed. And we can find you at edcyzewski.com. I want to put the link down below because probably nobody spells your
No
name
one's gonna
quite
spell it right.
right. It's EDCYZEWSKI.com, Ed
Way to go.
Cyzewski. And just give us a synopsis again of your book, your latest book, Reconnect, Spiritual Restoration from Digital Distraction. Tell us about that real quick.
Yeah. It compares the challenges we face of digital formation versus spiritual formation.
Mm,
And that I don't think we realize just how much we're being formed and shaped and, frankly, manipulated
yeah,
by our digital devices, by social media. And the book really deals with smartphones in particular because we carry them with us.
yeah,
And
all
people
the time.
average between like 2 to 4 hours a day on just their smartphones.
Don't say that.
Yep.
my my average is like 8 or 9.
Yep. Yep.
Because you can actually look and see what. So
Right. It
I'm
doesn't lie.
slowly lowering that. You'll see the average is 2 to 3 because then that blows me out of the water.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I mean, no judgment here. I mean,
That's embarrassing.
hey, I mean, so I wrote like the book that I needed. Like I didn't, that's what people say to me, like, well, you're so good at like this. I'm like, no, I'm bad. Like that's
Right.
why I wrote the book. Like I'm not
Yeah.
like this guru. Like it was a journey of multiple years
Yeah.
for me. And honestly, it started out as a book about parenting. Like that's like because I saw my kids would like just be these little batteries that kind of like plug into me and like drain me of my energy, and then I would just be
Mm,
like,
mm-hmm.
let me go on Facebook for an hour while they're like playing and they're around me and they're waiting for me to do stuff with them, and it's like I'm just like, no kids, I'm on Facebook. So this was my own journey too. I've lived
Mm,
the book,
yeah.
so I can completely relate to that. So yeah, it's digital formation, and the idea is that like these apps and devices we have, like they have a design for us that's not in keeping with our values. They're part of an ad-driven attention economy
Mm,
where revenue is linked to the amount of time people spend on their screens looking at apps and other things. So
right.
yeah, there's a lot of motivation to make your phone as useful and as essential as possible, And I think we almost feel like it's like a hostage situation where it's like my friends and family are on my phone. I can't, lose my phone.
Right.
It becomes hard. We can't imagine our lives without our phones. And so what Reconnect aims to do is to give people just information, just to empower them with like, this is what the goal is. This is what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can decide what you want to do with that.
Right.
And, I encourage people just to like, there's like all these engineers and supercomputers and psychologists all working together to make these apps addicting. So shouldn't you spend a little bit of time and money to guard yourself, to guard your attention, to guard your time,
Right.
to protect what matters the most to you? And, and the good news is that there are things you can do that help. Like
Yeah.
you can take steps. Like we have so much more power and agency than we realize. And that's honestly, like that's been the biggest thing for me in my journey with all this stuff is, you know, it's a situation where we can almost despair and to realize you do have agency and control over
Right.
the stuff that, is leading you down to some dark places sometimes.
Right.
That's really good. And so, yeah, then I share spiritual formation practices that actually heal you and restore you and make like kind of like the stuff that we want to get out of
Counteract.
the digital stuff,
Mm-hmm.
the spiritual stuff can actually give you what you want while
Uh,
also, helping you not rely on it. So it's like, let's have something like that's positive and life-giving to replace the digital stuff
right.
that's actually draining us.
And I love at the end of every chapter you have here's a couple little things you can try, you can experiment with, you can do.
Right.
So it's not like a whole huge long tough thing to do. It's just like, hey, just try this week. It's really
Yes.
easy. So it's easier than you might imagine
Yes.
to
That's
take
the
back
thing.
that control.
Yes, like just like little things you can do, little tweaks can make a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the book where, I mean, I've been moving, our lives have been in chaos because of all the COVID-19 with our kids being home. My wife's a professor, like,
Yeah.
we didn't have any moving help. We didn't have any renovation help.
Ugh,
We had family coming to visit us. Now they had to cancel. Like, I had, such little time to promote this book and to give it
mm,
out to people. And it's by far the book that I've had the most feedback from people who have tried this stuff. They're trying
right.
out the stuff that I suggest in the book, and they say, "Oh my gosh, this has made a huge difference in my life."
Yes. Yes.
And it's not any secret. Like it's not proprietary. Like it's, there are different things out there on the web about this, but it's something where like I've spent the time to work with a researcher from University of Connecticut. Like we've gone through the literature and what's out there to find out like here's the stuff that works the best,
Right. Mm,
and to give people some like quick wins to experiment with. And like if you give people some quick wins, it's really encouraging.
yeah, for sure. I love it. Ed, thank you so much for bringing this to us. Thank you for doing that research, giving us a shortcut, and just sharing your wealth of knowledge. We appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.